What if everything you've been told about being considerate, accommodating, and putting others first is actually the very thing keeping you powerless? But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. Think about it for a moment. From childhood, we're conditioned to believe that self-focus is selfish, that strength comes from serving everyone else's needs before our own. We're taught to scatter our energy across countless distractions, to constantly seek approval, to bend ourselves into shapes that please others. Has this ever happened to you? You find yourself exhausted, pulled in a dozen different directions, wondering why you feel so powerless, despite all your efforts to be good, to be helpful, to be what others expect. The uncomfortable truth is that this conditioning isn't accidental. When your attention is fragmented, when your energy is dispersed among other people's priorities, when you're constantly looking outward for validation, you become manageable, you become predictable, you become weak. And weakness, whether we want to admit it or not, serves those who understand how power really works. Throughout history, the most influential figures understood something that modern society desperately wants you to forget: that true strength begins with an almost ruthless focus on self-mastery, not the shallow self-help version of self-improvement, but something far more demanding and transformative. We're talking about the kind of discipline that turns you inward, that forces you to confront your own weaknesses without mercy, that builds something unshakable within you. This isn't about becoming cruel or indifferent to others. What you're about to discover might surprise you. It's about recognizing that when you master yourself completely, when you develop the kind of inner discipline that most people will never even attempt, you become immune to the manipulation that keeps everyone else trapped in cycles of distraction and dependency. Consider the person who can sit in silence while others fill every moment with noise. Think about someone who acts from strategy rather than emotion, who speaks rarely but with devastating precision, who moves through the world with a kind of controlled intensity that others can't quite define but definitely feel. That person operates from a different level entirely. The ancient strategists knew this. They understood that external power flows naturally from internal mastery, that the person who cannot command themselves will always be at the mercy of those who can. Stay with me until the end, because what we're exploring goes far deeper than simple self-control or motivation. We're talking about a fundamental rewiring of how you see yourself and your place in the world. This transformation doesn't happen through comfort or by following the same patterns that have kept you scattered and reactive. It requires something most people aren't willing to embrace: the discipline to sacrifice what feels good in the moment for what builds lasting strength. It means learning to see distraction for what it really is. Not innocent entertainment, but a systematic weakening of your ability to focus, to think clearly, to act with purpose. When you truly understand this, when you begin to apply these principles with consistency, something shifts. The noise that once controlled you becomes irrelevant. The opinions that once shaped your decisions lose their power. The chaos that once scattered your energy becomes an opportunity to reclaim the focus that was stolen from you. This transformation isn't some modern self-help revelation. Centuries ago, Niccolo Machiavelli observed something that cuts straight to the heart of human nature. A person who cannot command themselves will never successfully command anything else. It's a hidden truth that reveals why so many people struggle with influence, why their decisions lack weight, why others don't take them seriously despite their good intentions and hard work. If you value depth over surface-level motivation, subscribing ensures you get content that creates lasting change rather than temporary inspiration. The journey toward genuine self-mastery requires you to completely reframe how you see discipline itself. Most people think of discipline as being kind to themselves, as gentle self-improvement, as gradual progress, with plenty of room for comfort and understanding. But this mindset keeps you trapped in the same patterns that created your current limitations. Real discipline isn't self-care. It's an act of controlled aggression against every weak impulse that has been holding you back. Think about the moments when you know exactly what you should do, yet you find yourself making excuses, delaying action, or indulging in behaviors that move you further from your goals. These aren't innocent mistakes or understandable human moments. They're acts of betrayal against your own potential. Every time you choose the comfortable option over the right option, every time you rationalize why you can't start today, every time you give in to the voice that says you deserve a break, you're actively working against the person you could become. This revelation changes everything once you truly absorb its impact. Your relationship with temptation shifts completely. Instead of seeing resistance to immediate gratification as deprivation, you begin to recognize it as warfare against the parts of yourself that keep you small. The decision to wake up early becomes an attack on laziness. The choice to work when motivation is absent becomes an assault on mediocrity. The commitment to silence when others fill space with meaningless chatter becomes a systematic dismantling of the need for external validation. Behind the scenes of every person who commands respect, who moves through the world with unshakable confidence, who seems immune to the chaos that destabilizes everyone else, you'll find this same understanding. They've learned to treat their own weaknesses as enemies to be defeated, rather than personality traits to be accepted. They've discovered that true strength emerges not from self-acceptance, but from self-conquest. Now, I want to go even deeper into this mindset because understanding the philosophy is only the beginning. The real transformation happens when you learn to apply these principles systematically, when you develop the specific disciplines that turn these insights into lived reality. The first of these disciplines reveals how power is never free, how everything worth having demands a price that most people aren't willing to pay, and how sacrifice becomes the foundation upon which all lasting strength is built. Write in the comments, "I choose strength over comfort." The first law that governs this transformation is perhaps the most difficult for people to accept, because it directly challenges everything modern culture teaches about achieving success. We live in a world that promises you can have everything, that you deserve comfort while pursuing greatness, that sacrifice is an outdated concept from less enlightened times. But this comfortable lie is precisely what keeps most people trapped in mediocrity. Power has never been free. Every empire that has endured, every leader who has commanded genuine respect, every person who has risen above the masses has understood this fundamental truth. Greatness is purchased through strategic abandonment. The hidden revelation behind every success story isn't what they gained, but what they were willing to give up along the way. Look behind the scenes of any lasting achievement and you'll find a trail of sacrificed pleasures, abandoned comforts, and deliberately chosen hardships. This mindset separates those who rise from those who remain stuck. Weak individuals cannot part with their pleasures because they've made comfort their master. They cling to distractions because silence forces them to confront their own emptiness. They refuse to abandon their need for approval because external validation has become their drug of choice. These aren't character flaws to be understood and accepted. They're chains that must be broken through deliberate action. The journey toward real strength requires you to reverse this relationship entirely. Instead of serving your comfort, you make comfort serve your growth. Instead of avoiding discomfort, you seek it out as proof that you're moving in the right direction. The hours before dawn don't belong to those who prioritize sleep. They belong to those who understand that while others rest, you advance. The moments when motivation disappears don't signal time to pause. They signal time to prove that action doesn't depend on feeling. Consider how this applies to your daily decisions. Every time you choose immediate gratification over long-term benefit, you're voting for the person you've always been rather than the person you could become. Every distraction you indulge, every excuse you make, every delay you allow is evidence that you're still owned by weakness rather than owning your own power. The transformation happens when you begin to see these moments of choice as opportunities to demonstrate sovereignty over your own impulses. This doesn't mean becoming harsh or joyless. It means becoming selective with surgical precision. The disciplined person doesn't eliminate all pleasure. They eliminate pleasure that serves no purpose beyond momentary escape. They don't avoid all comfort. They avoid comfort that breeds weakness. They don't reject all approval. They reject the need for approval as a driving force in their decisions. Now, understanding this principle intellectually is only the beginning, because the real challenge lies in applying it when the cost feels highest, when the sacrifice demands more than you think you can give, when every part of you wants to retreat back into familiar patterns of ease and avoidance. This realization transforms everything about how you approach sacrifice itself. Most people see giving something up as a loss, as deprivation, as punishment for wanting more from life. But this perspective keeps them trapped in scarcity thinking. The disciplined person understands something completely different. Sacrifice isn't loss, it's investment. Every comfort you abandon becomes raw material for building something stronger. Every pleasure you deny becomes proof that nothing external controls your decisions. If this made you think differently about discipline and strength, a like helps others ready for this perspective find it. This strategic approach to sacrifice reveals a hidden truth about how real power actually operates. Leaders throughout history didn't achieve dominance by accumulating more than everyone else. They achieved it by systematically abandoning anything that weakened their position. They recognized that holding on to everything means controlling nothing. The journey toward mastery requires you to identify what owns you and deliberately break those chains, one by one. Consider the impact of how you begin each day. While most people surrender their mornings to comfort, hitting snooze buttons and easing slowly into consciousness, those who understand this principle claim the hours before dawn as their territory. These aren't just early hours. They're the foundation upon which everything else is built. When the world sleeps, you advance. When others prioritize rest over progress, you demonstrate that your goals matter more than your temporary discomfort. This mindset shift reveals something profound about the relationship between immediate gratification and long-term power. The person who cannot sacrifice sleep for ambition is the same person who cannot sacrifice distraction for focus, who cannot sacrifice approval, and for independence, who cannot sacrifice comfort for growth. These aren't separate challenges. They're expressions of the same fundamental weakness, the inability to choose future strength over present ease. The transformation happens when you begin to view these moments of choice as declarations of identity. Each time you rise when your body wants to rest, each time you work when motivation is absent, each time you maintain discipline when no one is watching, you're not just completing a task. You're proving to yourself that you are the type of person who chooses strength over convenience. These decisions compound over time, creating an unshakable foundation of self-trust. Behind the scenes of every person who commands respect and moves through the world with quiet confidence, you'll find this same pattern of strategic sacrifice. They've learned to see temporary discomfort as the price of permanent strength. They understand that what feels like deprivation in the moment becomes the source of their freedom later. Now, this principle of sacrifice connects directly to something even more fundamental, the relationship between time and power, because the person who cannot master their hours will never master anything else that matters. Write in the comments, "I sacrifice comfort for strength." Time becomes the battleground where this transformation either succeeds or fails. But within that battle lies an even more crucial resource that most people squander without realizing its value. In a world designed to fragment your focus, attention has become the rarest and most powerful currency you possess. Yet everywhere you look, systems are engineered to steal it from you. Social media notifications, endless entertainment options, the constant buzz of other people's urgencies. These aren't innocent distractions, they're systematic attacks on your ability to think deeply and act with purpose. The person who can maintain focus in this environment of manufactured chaos gains an almost unfair advantage. While others scatter their mental energy across dozens of meaningless inputs, you concentrate yours into pure, directed force. This concentrated attention becomes your weapon for cutting through complexity, for seeing opportunities others miss, for making decisions based on clarity rather than confusion. But protecting your attention requires you to abandon something that feels natural and necessary: the need for others to validate your choices. The journey toward independence reveals a hidden truth about approval-seeking behavior. Every time you bend your decisions to match what others expect, every time you modify your path to earn their praise, every time you seek permission for choices that are yours alone to make, you're surrendering the very foundation of personal power. The person who needs approval has already handed control of their life to others. This revelation changes how you view social dynamics entirely. The conversations that once felt important because they made you feel included begin to feel empty because they serve no strategic purpose. The opinions that once shaped your choices lose their influence because you recognize them as external attempts to control your direction. The validation that once felt necessary becomes irrelevant because your decisions are based on your goals, not their comfort. The transformation deepens when you begin to see every moment of resistance to immediate gratification as evidence of your sovereignty. Each time you deny yourself a pleasure that serves no purpose beyond temporary escape, each time you choose productive discomfort over comfortable distraction, each time you maintain discipline when no one is watching, you're proving something profound: that external forces do not own you. Your impulses do not control your actions. Your environment does not dictate your responses. This content is for those who understand real transformation takes more than quick fixes. Subscribe if you're committed to this journey of deliberate growth. These aren't small victories, they're declarations of independence from the systems that keep most people trapped in reactive patterns. The person who can sit in silence while others fill every moment with noise, who can work while others seek entertainment, who can delay gratification while others indulge every impulse, operates from a fundamentally different level of personal freedom. Now, this mastery over attention and independence from external validation creates the foundation for something even more powerful: the ability to command your emotional responses rather than being commanded by them. Write in the comments, "I control my attention." This foundation of controlled attention and emotional independence reveals something most people never grasp about time itself. While everyone treats time as if it were infinite, as if tomorrow is guaranteed, those who understand power recognize time as the ultimate currency. Every second that passes is gone forever, and every moment wasted is a gift to mediocrity. The masses drift through their days, convinced that motivation will eventually arrive, that the perfect moment will present itself, that someday they'll finally take action. But someday is a lie that keeps people trapped in perpetual delay. The transformation happens when you embrace a truth that makes most people uncomfortable. Death moves closer with every tick of the clock. This isn't meant to create fear, but to create urgency. The person who truly understands mortality doesn't waste time on hesitation. They don't wait for perfect conditions. They don't delay difficult decisions until they feel ready. They act, because inaction is the silent killer of every dream, every goal, every possibility for something greater. This mindset completely changes your relationship with each hour of your day. Instead of letting time flow around you like a passive observer, you begin to command it with military precision. Every hour becomes a soldier under your control, deployed with specific purpose, given clear objectives, never allowed to wander into meaningless territory. The disciplined person doesn't wait for motivation to strike. They create structure that makes motivation irrelevant. They don't hope for productive days. They engineer them through systematic control of their time. Consider how this applies to your current patterns. The moments you spend scrolling through distractions, the hours lost to entertainment that adds nothing to your growth, the energy scattered across activities that serve no strategic purpose. These aren't innocent relaxation. They're systematic weakening of your ability to focus on what matters. The journey toward mastery requires you to see time as your most valuable weapon and guard it accordingly. This revelation extends beyond simple productivity. When you truly master your relationship with time, when you stop treating it casually and start treating it as the foundation of everything you want to build, your entire presence changes. You move with intention rather than reacting to circumstances. You speak with purpose rather than filling silence with noise. You act from strategy rather than impulse. Behind the scenes of every person who seems to accomplish the impossible, who appears to have more hours in their day than everyone else, you'll find this same understanding. They haven't discovered how to create more time. They've learned to eliminate everything that steals it from them. Now, this mastery over time creates the perfect foundation for developing something that separates the truly powerful from everyone else. The ability to remain completely calm and controlled when everyone around you is losing their emotional balance. Write in the comments, "I command my time." This controlled relationship with time creates the foundation for perhaps the most powerful transformation of all, the ability to act regardless of how you feel. Most people live as slaves to their emotional states, waiting for motivation to strike before they move, delaying action until they feel ready, using their moods as excuses for inaction. This dependency on feeling creates a predictable pattern of mediocrity. When motivation is high, they act. When energy is low, they stop. When confidence wavers, they hesitate. This emotional slavery keeps them trapped in cycles of inconsistency. The disciplined person operates from a completely different paradigm. They understand that action creates motivation, not the other way around. They don't wait to feel like working, they work, and the feeling follows. They don't postpone difficult conversations until they feel confident. They have the conversation, and confidence builds through the process. This revelation changes everything about how you approach any challenge or opportunity. Hesitation becomes your greatest enemy in this transformation, because while you pause to consider, to overthink, to wait for perfect conditions, others are moving forward and claiming the ground you could have taken. History shows us that those who delay lose advantages to those who act swiftly and decisively. The moment of opportunity rarely announces itself with fanfare. It appears quietly, briefly, and moves on to those who recognize it and respond immediately. This understanding completely reframes how you structure your daily existence. Every task, every conversation, every decision becomes an opportunity to either advance your position or surrender ground to others. Nothing can be left to chance or treated casually. The person who masters this principle moves through their day with surgical precision, ensuring that each moment either sharpens their skills, advances their goals, or eliminates something that weakens their position. Consider the impact this has on your decision-making process. Instead of overthinking every choice until the opportunity disappears, you develop the ability to assess quickly and act decisively. Instead of seeking perfect information before moving forward, you act with the information available and adjust as new data emerges. This doesn't mean being reckless. It means understanding that calculated speed often beats perfect preparation. The transformation deepens when you realize that this approach to action and timing naturally leads to something even more powerful, the ability to remain completely calm and unreadable, while others around you lose control of their emotions and reveal their weaknesses. Write in the comments, "I act without waiting." This decisive approach to action creates the perfect foundation for establishing the kind of daily structure that separates those who drift from those who dominate. Your mornings and evenings become sacred territory, not left to chance or mood, but deliberately crafted to sharpen your mind and strengthen your resolve. While most people stumble into their days without direction, checking phones immediately upon waking, filling their minds with other people's urgencies before they've even defined their own priorities, the disciplined person claims these crucial hours as weapons for mental preparation. The transformation happens when you understand that how you begin and end each day determines everything that falls between. Your morning ritual isn't about comfort or gentle awakening. It's about forging clarity, building mental strength, and preparing for battle. Your evening reflection isn't passive relaxation. It's strategic analysis of the day's victories and failures, planning adjustments for tomorrow's approach. These aren't habits, they're daily declarations that you control your mental state, rather than letting circumstances control you. This systematic approach reveals a fundamental shift in your relationship with time itself. Instead of being devoured by time's relentless passage, instead of feeling like days slip away without meaningful progress, you begin to make time serve your agenda. Every hour becomes deliberate, every routine becomes purposeful. Time stops being something that happens to you and becomes something you wield as a strategic weapon for advancement. But perhaps the most powerful transformation occurs in how you handle the emotional storms that destroy most people's ability to think clearly and act strategically. Emotions like anger, fear, and desire become chains that bind weak individuals to predictable patterns. They rage when provoked, panic when threatened, chase immediate gratification when tempted. This emotional reactivity makes them easy to read, easy to manipulate, easy to defeat. The journey toward true power requires you to see emotions differently. They're not forces to be suppressed or eliminated, but energy to be harnessed and directed. Anger becomes fuel for focused determination. Fear becomes information about what requires preparation. Desire becomes drive that can be channeled toward meaningful goals. The key lies not in feeling less, but in never allowing feelings to override strategic thinking. This emotional mastery creates something that others find both attractive and unsettling: unshakable presence. While others are tossed around by every provocation, every criticism, every unexpected challenge, you remain centered, calculating, deliberately responsive rather than emotionally reactive. Now, this emotional control becomes even more powerful when combined with something that most people fear, but the disciplined person embraces as a source of strength: the strategic use of solitude and the deliberate cultivation of focus in a world designed to scatter your attention. Write in the comments, "I control my emotions." This emotional control reveals something that most people never understand about true power. It belongs not to those who feel nothing, but to those who feel everything yet remain strategically unshaken. The person who has mastered this discipline can experience anger without letting it cloud their judgment, feel fear without allowing it to paralyze their actions, encounter desire without becoming enslaved to immediate gratification. This is the difference between suppression and mastery. Suppression creates internal pressure that eventually explodes, while mastery channels emotional energy into calculated responses. The transformation becomes profound when you realize that predictability is the death of influence. When people can anticipate your emotional reactions, when they know exactly which buttons to push to make you angry, fearful, or desperate, you become a tool in their hands rather than an independent force. The masses live in this predictable state, laughing when the crowd laughs, raging when the mob rages, celebrating and mourning on cue. This emotional synchronization makes them easy to read, easy to manipulate, easy to control. But the person who has developed true discipline operates differently. They appear to feel, they may even display emotion when it serves their purpose, but they are never ruled by what they display. This creates something that others find both compelling and unsettling: emotional unpredictability. When you cannot be easily read, when your responses don't follow expected patterns, when your emotional state doesn't dictate your actions, you become a mystery that others must navigate carefully. This principle extends far beyond individual interactions. Consider how this applies to your decision-making process in crucial moments. The undisciplined person makes choices based on temporary emotional states. They quit when frustrated, overspend when excited, avoid challenges when anxious. Their emotions become the primary driver of their actions, creating a life shaped by impulse rather than intention. The disciplined person, however, uses emotion as information, while maintaining strategic thinking as the governing force behind every significant choice. The journey toward this level of emotional mastery requires you to develop what might seem like contradictory abilities: the capacity to feel deeply while remaining detached from the feeling, to appear engaged while maintaining internal distance, to respond appropriately while calculating every response. This isn't about becoming cold or disconnected, it's about becoming selectively responsive rather than automatically reactive. Now, this emotional mastery creates the perfect foundation for embracing something that weak people fear, but strong people use as their greatest advantage: the strategic power of separation from the noise and opinions of the crowd. Write in the comments, "I master my responses." This selective emotional responsiveness creates a foundation for something much deeper: the transformation from emotional suppression to emotional alchemy. Most people who attempt self-control make the mistake of trying to eliminate feelings entirely, bottling up anger until it explodes, burying fear until it paralyzes them, denying desire until it overwhelms their willpower. This approach creates internal pressure that eventually destroys their composure in the worst possible moments. The disciplined person understands a completely different approach. They don't eliminate emotional energy, they redirect it. Anger becomes laser-focused determination to overcome obstacles. Fear becomes heightened awareness that sharpens preparation. Desire becomes sustained drive toward meaningful goals. This isn't suppression, it's conversion. The same energy that destroys the undisciplined becomes fuel that powers the strategic mind. History provides countless examples of brilliant leaders who understood strategy, who commanded armies and built empires, yet lost everything because they couldn't master this single principle. Kings who destroyed dynasties through fits of rage, generals who lost battles because fear clouded their judgment, rulers who bankrupted nations chasing immediate desires. These weren't stupid people. They were strategically intelligent individuals who remained slaves to their emotional impulses at crucial moments. The pattern repeats in modern times. Careers destroyed by angry outbursts during important meetings, relationships ruined by jealous reactions to imagined threats, fortunes lost through fear-based decisions during market volatility. The tragedy lies not in the feeling itself, but in allowing the feeling to override strategic thinking when precision matters most. This understanding creates a fundamental shift in how you approach every significant decision. Instead of asking how you feel about a situation, you ask what response serves your long-term interests. Instead of reacting based on immediate emotional impact, you calculate what action advances your position. This doesn't make you cold or inhuman. It makes you deliberately responsive rather than accidentally reactive. The transformation deepens when you realize that this strategic approach to emotion naturally leads to something that protects you from one of the greatest threats to personal power: the constant noise and opinion of others who want to pull you into their chaos and distraction. Write in the comments, "I convert emotion into strategy." This strategic approach to emotion naturally creates the foundation for embracing something that most people fear, but the truly disciplined use as their greatest advantage: deliberate separation from the constant noise and opinions of the crowd. The masses live in a state of perpetual connection, drowning in other people's thoughts, constantly seeking validation through social interaction, filling every moment with external input. This dependency on crowd energy keeps them weak because they never develop the strength that can only be built in solitude. The transformation occurs when you realize that isolation isn't loneliness, it's concentration. While others scatter their mental energy across countless social obligations and meaningless interactions, you gather yours into focused power. The crowd demands nothing of depth from anyone because depth makes them uncomfortable. They prefer surface-level conversations, shared distractions, collective mediocrity that requires no individual excellence from anyone. Behind the scenes of every person who has achieved something significant, you'll find periods of deliberate withdrawal from social noise, not because they hate people, but because they understand that clarity can only emerge in silence, that original thinking requires separation from groupthink, that personal strength must be built away from the weakening influence of those who settle for less. The hidden truth about solitude reveals why weak people fear it so intensely. When external distractions are removed, when other voices are silenced, when the constant buzz of social validation disappears, they're forced to confront what actually exists within their own minds. For many, this confrontation reveals emptiness, insecurity, lack of direction, absence of genuine purpose. So they run back to the noise, back to the crowd, back to the comfortable distraction of other people's energy. But the disciplined person approaches solitude differently. They use these quiet hours for systematic self-examination, studying their own patterns like a strategist studying an opponent. They refine their habits without external pressure to conform, strengthen their will without crowd influence, build what could be called a mental fortress, an unshakable core that remains stable regardless of external chaos. This process of strategic withdrawal allows you to return to social interaction from a position of strength rather than need. You engage with others because you choose to, not because you require their validation or energy to feel complete. You speak when your words serve a purpose, remain silent when silence serves you better. Now, this mastery of solitude creates the perfect foundation for developing perhaps the most powerful weapon in human interaction, the strategic use of silence that makes others reveal their weaknesses while you remain completely unreadable. Write in the comments, "I embrace strategic solitude." This strategic withdrawal from social interaction creates something that gives you tremendous advantage in any relationship or negotiation: unpredictability. When you're constantly available, constantly visible, constantly responsive to every social demand, you become easy to read and therefore easy to control. But when you periodically disappear from view, when you withdraw without explanation, when you become selectively unavailable, others are forced to wonder what you're thinking, what you're planning, what you're building in that space away from them. This calculated distance transforms how others perceive and respond to you. Instead of taking your presence for granted, they begin to value it. Instead of assuming they know your thoughts, they become curious about your silence. Instead of feeling entitled to your attention, they recognize it as something that must be earned. The transformation happens not through dramatic gestures, but through systematic protection of your mental space and strategic management of your availability. The journey toward this level of focus reveals why concentration has become the rarest and most valuable resource in the modern world. While everyone around you drowns in notifications, endless entertainment, options, and manufactured urgencies designed to fracture their attention, you begin to guard your mental energy like a precious commodity. The ability to think deeply, to focus completely, to maintain sustained attention on what matters becomes your secret weapon in a world of distracted minds. This protection of focus naturally leads to perhaps the most powerful tool in human interaction: the strategic use of silence. Most people fear quiet moments in conversation, rushing to fill every pause with words, explanations, nervous laughter, or meaningless chatter. This compulsive talking reveals everything about them: their insecurities, their desperation for approval, their inability to sit comfortably with themselves, their need to be constantly validated through verbal response. But silence operates differently. True silence creates mystery, and mystery is magnetic. When you can sit quietly while others ramble, when you can listen completely without feeling compelled to respond, immediately, when you can hold space without filling it with noise, you force others into a position where they reveal far more than they intended. They project onto your silence their own fears, assumptions, and desires, essentially telling you exactly how to influence them. The transformation deepens when you realize that every unnecessary word diminishes your power, while every strategic silence increases it. People respect what they cannot fully understand, and they cannot understand what remains unspoken. Now, this mastery of silence creates the foundation for something even more powerful: the ability to adapt and transform yourself based on changing circumstances while maintaining an unshakable core of purpose and will. Write in the comments, "My silence speaks louder." This mastery of silence naturally transforms how you use words when you do choose to speak. Instead of treating conversation as casual social noise, every word becomes deliberate, calculated, designed for maximum impact with minimum effort. The undisciplined person talks constantly, explaining themselves endlessly, filling silence with nervous chatter that reveals their insecurities and diminishes their influence. But when you speak rarely, when you choose your words with surgical precision, when you say exactly what needs to be said and nothing more, your voice carries weight that others cannot ignore. This transformation becomes most powerful during conflict, when emotions run high and most people lose all control over their responses. They shout louder, desperate to be heard, convinced that volume equals strength. They argue endlessly, revealing their position, exposing their weaknesses, exhausting themselves in futile attempts to win through noise. Meanwhile, the disciplined person sits in calm silence, watching, listening, calculating. They let their opponent drain their energy through emotional outbursts while remaining perfectly composed, perfectly controlled. The revelation becomes clear. The person who can remain silent during chaos commands the situation without saying a word. Others exhaust themselves against your stillness, and when you finally speak, your calm voice cuts through their noise like a blade through paper. One precisely delivered sentence can end what others couldn't resolve through hours of shouting. But perhaps the most profound understanding emerges when you realize that reality itself matters less than perception in human interactions. People don't respond to who you actually are. They respond to who you appear to be. This isn't about deception, it's about strategic presentation. Every gesture, every silence, every calculated response shapes how others perceive your strength, your intelligence, your value. The person who understands this crafts their image with the same precision they apply to everything else. This journey toward complete self-mastery ultimately serves a purpose that extends far beyond personal advantage. The creation of something that outlasts your physical existence. Legacy becomes the final discipline, the ultimate test of whether your transformation was merely self-serving or genuinely significant. The comfort you sacrifice today, the disciplines you embrace, the silent strength you build, these create ripples that extend far beyond your lifetime, influencing others to pursue their own transformation long after you're gone. Now, this understanding of legacy as the ultimate measure of disciplined living brings us to perhaps the most challenging aspect of this entire transformation. Learning to embrace pain not as punishment, but as the very forge in which unbreakable character is created. Write in the comments, I build lasting strength. If you've stayed with me through this entire exploration of discipline and inner strength, you understand something that most people will never grasp. The transformation we've discussed isn't just theory. It's a practical roadmap for anyone willing to choose difficult growth over comfortable stagnation. The content here on this channel is designed for those who recognize that surface-level motivation isn't enough, that real change requires deeper understanding and consistent application. If these insights resonate with you, if you're ready to continue this journey of purposeful development, then subscribing ensures you won't miss the strategies and perspectives that can genuinely shift how you approach your goals and challenges. For those who made it all the way to the end, write in the comments, I'm building something lasting. This tells me you're serious about applying these concepts rather than just consuming them passively. If this conversation created the kind of connection where you found yourself thinking differently about discipline, focus, and personal strength, alike helps more people discover this perspective when they're ready for it. There's a video right here that takes this foundation we've built and shows you exactly how to apply these principles when facing your biggest obstacles and resistance. Click and continue with me over there, because what we've covered today is just the beginning of what's possible when you truly commit to this path.